Now, from Wish TV, your local news source, this is All Indiana Politics.
Good Sunday morning. Welcome to another edition of All Indiana Politics. I'm Phil Sanchez. Cleanup continues a week after what the governor says was the fourth largest tornado outbreak in the state's history. Here's the official tally from the Indiana Department of Homeland Security. Between 20 and 25 tornadoes confirmed so far. 5 dead, 34 injured. More than 700 structures sustained some kind of damage and 165 were destroyed. Our government reporter Garrett Berquist met with the doctor of IDHS to go over what to expect for the recovery effort.
With us now is Indiana Department of Homeland Security Executive Director Joel Thacker. Joel, thanks for letting us come by today.
You're welcome.
How does the outbreak on March 31st compare to what you've seen in your career?
Well, it's the worst that I've seen in my career. I've been through a couple of tornadoes, not to this magnitude. Certainly, the most recent is the Henryville tornado back in 2012, and I think the damage that we've seen so far just in Sullivan County alone is as bad as I saw down there.
So now we're moving into the long-term recovery phase. What does that look like at the state's level? Tell me how that process is going to go.
We have our one-stop shop currently set up in Sullivan County and Johnson County, where we have a number of state agencies that are there. So if you have a need for a driver's license, a birth certificate, you need help with food insecurity, all those agencies are there. So you don't have to go to multiple places. So we're trying to make it as easy as possible to come to one location to kind of start to get back on track a little bit and meet some of those basic social needs at this time. Our next step is really long-term housing. So we have some folks that are in hotels. They have hotel vouchers for up to 30 days. We want to be communicating with those folks on a more longer-term need and what we need to be doing. And so those are some of those focal points that we're looking at right now.
Particularly for people who lost ID and or maybe did not have homeowners insurance, what are some things that they should be prepared to do when they go to one of these one-stop shops?
So one of the other state agencies there is our state insurance office. So they're there to help folks with information on insurance. If they didn't have insurance, what are some options for them? And those are, to be honest, we're really going to be focusing on those folks underinsured, uninsured. They're going to need the most support really getting back on their feet.
So we had about 20 to 25 tornadoes spread out all over the state. We had 2 pretty significant disaster areas in Sullivan and in Whiteland. Talk about the challenges that your agency faces when you're dealing with multiple geographically dispersed disaster zones and how you address them.
The more widespread it is, the thinner we become. But certainly our agency, we train for this, we prepare for this, we plan for this. So no matter what your Monday through Friday position is within Homeland Security, you know that you're going to be called to move into other lanes, to provide other areas of support, and our folks certainly have done that. So our finance section, our planning exercise section, our staffing other areas have gone out into other communities assisting with damage assessments. So our building code officials, some of our fire investigators are helping to get out and to look at some of the damage that's there and provide some feedback to our state emergency operations center as to what they're seeing, and then we can send additional folks to these areas.
What sorts of resources will the federal government be able to provide that go beyond what the state can provide at this time?
So it really enhances our footprint. It just makes it larger. So again, really looking at this individual assistance. So coming in and providing housing, looking at housing needs, looking at workforce development needs, child care needs. So folks are, they've lost their cars. So not only did they lose their home, they've lost their transportation. So many cars are destroyed in this. And so how are they going to get to work? How are they going to get their children to child care so that they can go to work? Looking at the mental health needs of these individuals, of these survivors of such an enormous tragic event, and bringing additional resources in to really understand what those needs are today, and then in the weeks and months ahead of us.
The municipal agencies in Sullivan and Whiteland in particular, obviously they bore the brunt of the initial damage from these storms. They're the ones who responded first, and frankly, they will be the last to return to normal operations. Talk about the reinforcements that the state, and for that matter, surrounding city and county agencies are providing to them.
I can't say enough about the men and women that were on the ground within minutes. So in Sullivan County, they lost their 911 center, lost communications, so phone lines, the ability to communicate via radio was not an option. And through, I think, planning, preparedness, and folks just stepping up, they quickly were able to get out there and start assessing the impact and looking for those most severely injured. Now we have other communities that have come in to support in Sullivan, in Whiteland. We have ongoing support because we know that they're tired, and many of them have suffered damage themselves. The emergency management director in Sullivan County, his home is destroyed. And so he has the stress of managing the rescue and recovery aspect as well as trying to take care of his own family. And so we need to continue to bring people in there to support him and his staff, and we're doing that. We have other first responders literally from all over the state that are in Sullivan County. We're setting up different shifts to operate, and we've done the same in Johnson. So it's been really great to see the public safety community come together to support these folks, and I know that will continue until they are back in a position where they can manage it by themselves.
All right, coming up, we meet another candidate going for the top job here in Indianapolis. Welcome back on this Sunday. We're now less than a month away from the municipal primaries. We've been introducing you to some of the candidates running for Central Indiana's top offices. Today, we bring you Indianapolis mayoral candidate Cliff Marsiglio. He's running for the Democratic primary. He recently sat down with our government reporter, Garrett Berquist.
With us now is Cliff Marsiglio. Cliff, thanks for dropping by.
Thank you for having me.
Why are you running for mayor of Indianapolis?
I've voted for the same mayor for the last 2 elections. I've seen in action over and over. I've seen politicians that I've put my trust into fail me at every opportunity. I trained to be a mental health clinician. I work in academia. I'm a community activist at night. And every time that I try to get something done, it feels like the very people that should be on my side are the ones that are leaving the people most vulnerable behind. And I can't let this happen any longer.
What's your plan for bringing down Indianapolis's murder rate?
The problem with the murder rate is, number one, we have way too many guns on the streets. About a year and a half ago, 2 years ago, I worked with the ATF, did a lot of work with the Columbus unit. We need to bring back Project Safe Neighborhoods. We need to have a federal intervention with getting guns out of the hands of people trafficking them and are the most violent. And this is something that our politicians have been loath to do because they've been afraid of how it looks to them politically.
You've proposed a crisis response team to deal with mental health and substance abuse related calls. Would that divert too many resources away from IMPD?
No, right now we are 250 officers down. It doesn't look like it's going to happen anytime soon that we're going to have any more officers. This does not mean that our recruiting team shouldn't be out. I talk to our recruiting team probably every other week. I go over to pre-academy readiness to talk to the people within the academies who are trying to get into the academies, and we do need more officers. However, even within the department, they say bringing in 200 new officers in the next 2 years is not going to be something that's going to be happening. However, bringing in unarmed civilian respondents is something that we can do without diverting any officer anywhere.
You've called potholes the official animal of Indianapolis.
I forgot I said that.
What's your plan for dealing with them?
The problem with potholes are we patch with the lowest bid contractors, the lowest rated materials. We don't do the right sort of processes. What's the Benjamin Franklin phrase, a stitch in time saves 9? If we were to do actual real patching, such as strip patching, stripping the roads down to the bare asphalt and then starting over, you know what? It would hold up far better than putting cold asphalt in and not doing anything else.
You said the city needs to end the drug war. How do you do that without violating federal and state laws? How much power does a mayor realistically have here?
The best that the mayor can do is direct the city council towards decriminalization. Trust me, I am not somebody who wants to see more drug use in the city. Today, it'll be 10 years from my last drink. I have not had alcohol in almost 10 years. I am not somebody who wants to see anybody else doing drugs of any sort. However, violence is erupting because of harder drugs, and drugs such as marijuana could easily divert the criminal element back to, well, I'm trying to think of how to phrase this correctly. Marijuana would keep people from doing the much harder drugs, and it is not as profitable to the gangs.
What role do you see yourself playing when interacting with state government, given that Indianapolis is both the state capital and the largest city?
We need to be the biggest cheerleader for Indianapolis as we can. I sit over at Jack's Donuts every few mornings, not every morning. I'd be a lot larger if I were. I see senators walking in on the way to the State House. Oftentimes they tell me they never hear anything at all from people within the city. They come here, they do their job. They're here for months at a time, and yet they hear nothing from the city. We have no cheerleaders telling them this is what we need for the city, what we need to do to make our state capital the shining beacon on the hill for the rest of the state.
What sets you apart from the other candidates in the Democratic primary?
I'm a boots on the ground kind of person. I do not like wearing these suits. I would rather be in a t-shirt. I would rather be out there stocking Narcan boxes. I'd rather be at community meetings. I'd rather be riding my bike through the city and talking to people. I am a boots on the ground person. I don't think that a lot of the candidates even talk to anybody outside of the people who get them elected.
All right, coming up, a historic arraignment, a federal lawsuit against the state, and much more. Indiana's best political team unpacks it all. All right, welcome back to All Indiana Politics as we welcome in two members of Indiana's best political team, Democrat Ariel Brandy and Republican Whitley Yates. Good to see you both. Happy Easter. We'll start with the biggest headline this week, and it was the arraignment of former President Donald Trump. Whitley, we'll start with you. Looking over the arraignment itself, how worried should Trump be about a conviction?
I'm going to be honest, he shouldn't be too worried about anything. And I thought that when they announced the charges that they were actually more concrete than what has been presented. And I'm actually shocked that it has been allowed to get this far when you have 34 charges, which really stem from one charge that are all outside, of the statute of limitations. I think that that is very alarming. And considering that the prosecutor actually ran his campaign to lock up Trump and is now following through with that campaign promise, it's hard to not see this as being political. However, if there was a law that was broken, I think accountability is deserved.
Ariel, I'll let you respond to that, and then I have another question about this on the back end. Go ahead.
I agree. I think the courts should allow it to play out how it's supposed to. I mean, it's unfortunate that the American public has been deceived by former President Trump, and now we're seeing all of these allegations and charges coming up. So I'm hoping that accountability, like Whitney has said, is a part of the process and that we can see that happen, because I think the American people deserve that, especially after all of the riff-raff that we've been able to hear about this presidential election and how it was, stolen away from him. So I think now that we're seeing these charges and these indictments come up, I think it's time for us to get some answers. And I'm really hoping that the court allows itself to play out for us to be able to get that.
In regards to the politics of it all, Ariel, have Democrats basically handed next year's Republican primary, in your opinion, to Trump by doing this? And should they worry that this might lead to a second Trump term?
I think what Democrats are really focused on are the same issues that we always are, is bringing health care to Americans, making sure that the working class have what they need. And I really hope that with the Republicans, that they can really focus on making sure that we're taking care of the American public and not so truly focused on the Trump arrangement. I'm really hoping that we can keep that focus moving forward and not let the politics kind of play out into the murkiness of it all.
Well, considering this is a politics show, we have a lot of politics to get to today, as you very well know. So closer to home, ladies, Governor Eric Holcomb signed a ban on gender transition procedures for transgender minors. The ACLU immediately filed a federal lawsuit on the grounds of discrimination. Ariel, even if this lawsuit succeeds, will this law lead to an exodus, in your opinion, of LGBTQ people from Indiana?
I think we've already been kind of seeing that. I think after RFRA happened, we have been seeing LGBTQ Hoosiers really trying to hold on for dear life in our state. And unfortunately, with this slate of hate that has been happening continuously in our state house, we are going to see some of our family members from the LGBTQ community end up leaving. It's unfortunate that the Republican Party, who has prided themselves in being the party of parental rights, has completely attacked parents and also children and transgender youth. So I definitely think that our LGBTQ families here in our state are feeling that. I've heard their stories. They are scared. They don't know what's going to happen in this state. And now that we have seen these continuous attacks on them, I would not be surprised if they decided that Indiana was no longer the state for them to be a part of.
Whitley, what say you?
I'm going to be honest. I'm happy that he signed the bill, because I think it's imperative that we're protecting children, even from themselves and sometimes from their parents. When we're looking at making these types of decisions, specifically life-altering decisions at such a young age, I don't think that it is incumbent upon children to make those decisions, and the parents who have been predicating these types of decisions are not thinking about the long-term effects and ramifications. And so as we're watching now this detransition movement happen all across the United States, it's incumbent upon Indiana to take action and to make sure that we are protecting trans youth even from themselves.
Whitley, Republicans, as you know, across the country have passed a flurry of legislation focused on transgender people this year. Do they risk alienating voters, especially if the court strikes down these gender transition care bans?
I'm going to be honest, the people that would be alienated were never going to vote for Republicans or see Republicans in the first place. And as opposed to coming together and to find common ground on these types of issues, that's not what's been happening. And as we are talking about trans youth and the trans community and how their community is mobilizing in different ways, we cannot stop and to think about what we just witnessed in Nashville, Tennessee, where we had a trans youth or trans person that identified as trans shoot up a school, and then the entire nation just wanted to not only ignore the trans part of their identity, but how that played into what has happened. The truth is that it's a very hypocritical air in Indiana, across the nation, where you're seeing a group of people advocate for one thing. When they don't get their way, then they're advocating for violence, they're advocating for revenge.
All right, you know what, Ariel, I want to get you in here. I have about 45 seconds left. Take us home.
Yeah, I mean, we can't keep using that talking point where because the person that had end up, having this mass shooting happen was trans, that is supposed to be the end-all be-all answer. The answer is gun violence is a problem in our country, and we as a country have not done what we needed to do to be able to place a ban on assault weapons, which state houses have been calling for across this country. And the GOP has been toting around the NRA and putting all of their money and funds and their candidates behind them, and now look at what we're ending up getting. So we cannot sit here and attack one population of people in this country.
People don't care about the laws.
We are out of time, ladies. We are out of time. We'll talk about this again soon, I'm sure. Happy Easter to you both. Thank you for coming on. We'll talk soon. We'll be right back.
Absolutely.
Thank you for joining us on All Indiana Politics. Be sure to tune in for a special episode next Sunday morning at 9:30. We will devote the entire show to the candidates in the Republican primary for mayor of Westfield. You can also find our brand new All Indiana Politics podcast It's part of the All Indiana Podcast Network at WishTV.com.